Welcome to Chapter 3. The Everything Engine presents Softening the Beat of Modern Emotion Theory with Evidence and Math. If Ekman was wrong, what was an emotion?
When Barrett and the other neurologists tried to recreate Ekman's experiments, they found they couldn't. Not exactly the way they were described in the studies. It turned out a crucial step thought to be insignificant in the process was left out of reports. And this even proved to be an error repeated by other scientists. Ekman's error was that his team and others failed to identify and remove bias from affecting their studies. What is the big deal about biases? In the past several years, Harvard University has posted online and for free various implicit bias tests, including one that helps you understand the systemic nature of racism. It isn't pretty, but basically, if you aren't working against biases, they are what determines the rules of your world. What was Ekman and his teams doing? When it comes to bias, it is more than just one thing. So for starters, they were introducing their staged emotion photos with leading questions, such as, "This is a picture of a happy person. Is this statement true? Yes or no?" This means that even if a person couldn't render meaning from the image directly, that they still had a 50% chance of getting the answer correct. Other studies revealed that in some circumstances, participants were coached first into understanding Western emotion words. This means that the staged photos worked more or less as a test for a Western emotions lesson given by researchers rather than a screening process looking for an overall shared yet private experience. Additional studies would show a staged emotion photo with a list of words, one of them being correct. Since they only used one example of a positive emotion, happiness, compared to other 6 negative words, participants should have been expected to easily be able to give researchers what they asked for. You can see how these studies were not asking for original ideas, but for participants to parrot back to researchers how well they had been trained. That is what happens when you don't remove bias, which turns a study into nothing more than a self-fulfilling prophecy. Flash forward to modern times, when staged photos with just empty fill-in-the-blank options were shown, or even just staged photos laid out as a comparison test. These studies resulted in individual participants not passing as expected, but instead, they failed horribly. If the classical view of emotions was correct, it didn't make sense to Barrett at first why these participants were failing at all. This was a routine experiment. After all, many others had no problem getting the proper results. Thinking it was her study, Dr. Barrett repeated the first series of experiments 8 times in 3 years, failing each time. Not willing to compromise, Barrett developed further new studies to be even less biased. These were even taken out to remote groups, just like in Ekman's study, but delivered completely devoid of setup containing any reference or use of Western emotion words or coaching. And that time, when left to their own devices and interpretations, participants were found to actually only be able to identify roughly 4 categories of sensations from the flashcards. That was it. Dr. Barrett goes over many more of these studies in her book, How Emotions Are Made, if you would like to learn more. And this isn't to say that facial expressions aren't important or you can't learn something from them. Dr. Pamela Meyers wrote a book and also has a TED Talk called Lie Spotting, that goes over the subtle ways that we project deception through our faces. Facial expressions are important, and it's true that we don't always have control over them, but they aren't always a direct translation of our emotional states as it was believed. And it was Dr. Barrett who coined the terms used to describe what she found to be our actual skill in the field of emotion recognition. What people are experiencing as emotions are different variations of only 4 sensations. Those 4 sensations are pleasant,
unpleasant,
arousal,
and calm. It is only these 4 ingredients that create every emotional reality, with each person's individual ability to perceive the degree of concentration or granulation, as Barrett calls it, differently. Think of making baked goods. You can make them any number of ways, but you are still using the same basic ingredients: a film matrix, a binder, some leavening, and flavoring. With those 4 simple categories, you can make anything from an instant cookie of emotion to a towering wedding cake of complex emotionality. All of Barrett's work is repeatable and verifiable, but they say that you can't have your cake and eat it too. Barrett's work hasn't been enough to overthrow the classical view of emotions completely. Something offering a more complete and unifying picture is still needed. Luckily for Barrett, that bigger picture was something I was researching as a civilian scientist, and what I now call the everything engine. This is how the everything engine is moved beyond being just a cool artistic object to actually being a needed, unifying mathematical model. Barrett doesn't know this, but her research converged with a whole universe of information. She was correct, and I could prove it. I believe Barrett has softened the beach in regards to the mass illusion behind emotions, but it can still be rejected because it too lacks a foundation in math and logic. It wasn't until after I uncovered the everything engine that I went back to Barrett's research and got my mind fully around what had not just happened to me, but to all of us. And I saw that the everything engine was the key to undoing it. It was the model that Barrett needed. The origin story of the everything engine started over a year ago from the making of this initial show. What I am going to show you next is not just what I uncovered starting April 1st, it's exactly how I uncovered it over the progressing days. I didn't just pull this device out of a magical hat or dig it up from the ground out of an ancient grave. It's modern, real, and you can see it. Most artists, scientists, or magicians don't normally take you behind the scenes to show you the messy doodles or the handmade 3-dimensional models. The material that survives the trash, at least. The classical view of emotions requires that personal mistakes and errors of judgment be hidden if you want to earn or maintain the respect of others. Otherwise, people who believe in the classical view will build biases against you. There is a living example of this too. Ever heard the saying, you can't make a first impression twice? If you can't change someone's first impression, how does forgiveness in that model work? In truth, it doesn't have to, because context is excludable. Context is going to be crucial here, because this is how you will know the relevancy of this grand uncovery. But I will ask you to forgive my mistakes. I'm going to show you my faults and errors, but also my corrections and further insight. This is the start to the true magical art and math experience, and I wish to show my work. This also proves that I have nothing up my sleeve in the form of stolen ideas, and also to show that my creative process isn't an illusion either. Anyone could have done this with the same context in their own head. I was simply lucky enough to see it first. Luck is nothing more than statistical math magic, making itself manifest in our life. Ready for more magic you can manifest in your own life? This ends Chapter 3.
Nice.
Want to learn more? Review the evidence or experience more questions being answered? Subscribe, like, and comment. Let us know what your favorite questions in life and science are. We will keep posting. Visit our website, theeverythingengine.wordpress.com, where we have posted the art, transcripts, and other useful things. Thanks again for watching. Up next starts Chapter 4. It's time to release the Everything Engine and give you its epic origin story.